Recording in progress.
We ready? Okay, now it's 5:02 and I call this meeting to order. My name is Huang Tran, Chair of the FedRACS. I have committee member Jack Dovey here and another committee member join us remotely, Erica Norton. I also have Deputy Mayor Honda and Council President Kochmar, as well as Council Member Jack Walsh here. And I believe Council Member Lydia Asefa Dawson is online with us as well. Welcome. All right. Okay, so we have quite long agenda for tonight. I think we have 10 or 11 actionable items. So we'll try to move this meeting as quickly as possible. The first on the agenda is, do we have any public comments?
We have no public comment.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to committee business. The first item is approval of summary minutes, March 22nd, 2022.
I move adoption.
I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I'm waiting for Erica. I think she's trying.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, the matter passed 3-0. We are moving on to item B, purchase of concrete mixer drum. EJ?
Good evening, Chair Tran, members of the committee, members of council, council president, deputy mayor. So I'm here before you tonight for two items. The first is related to a concrete mixer, and I am trying to share unsuccessfully my screen here. Sherry, can you let me share? So while we're working on that,
What would we do with that time?
in short, what we are looking at is a mixer that will fit in the back of one of our existing trucks that we can effectively pick up and use when we need to and put it down when we don't. So the system that you see in front of you is, specifically this gray one right here, is the one that we're looking at. We've been having a problem for a number of years, and it's not just the city, it's pretty much the entire concrete industry with getting concrete. In short, we typically need what are classified as short loads or less than a full truck because we're using them for whether it's pouring a sidewalk panel or pouring a bench for a park. It's not a full concrete mixer of truck. So we called, the most recent example is we called last Thursday to fix a couple of panels that are out on 348th right now. We were told we can have concrete in 3.5 weeks. And they'll be delivering it at 4:30 at night. Our staff goes home at 3 o'clock. So we have to pay overtime to have staff come in and pour concrete the only time we can get it. And additionally, we're paying for a full truck, whether we order a full truck or not, the way it works. So this would, we've been talking to a number of other cities as well and looking at how do we fix this. It's not something we can keep doing. Some cities are going the road of basically developing their own batch plant so they can make concrete on their own. We looked into doing that. Frankly, the skill it takes to do it, the cost, the staff resources, we don't have it, and we don't do enough to justify it, in my opinion. So this is kind of I'll call it the next best thing. So we can put this in the back of our truck, go down to Corliss, Miles, any of the ready mix plants. They will put concrete in this for us, and then we drive away. So we only pay for the concrete that they actually put in the truck. It's based on weight. So that will, in the long run, it's about a 2-year payback is what we've figured out to purchase this piece of equipment. We are proposing to purchase it out of operating funds in this budget. We had money associated with equipment rental for the summer for work. Frankly, if we don't have concrete, we're not getting the work done anyway. So we're proposing to take the what we were supposed to be using for equipment rentals and use that funding to acquire a piece of equipment to let us do the work. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, EJ.
I just have a clarification. So we're gonna buy this device, the drum, use our truck, go down to the batch plant, they'll fill it up to what our specs are, and then we'll come back and pour our own.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. So is this something that you could rent out to other cities when they need to use it?
We've talked about sharing it with other cities. We have not talked about charging them.
Okay.
But yes, we have started that conversation as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Walsh?
No, actually, that's fine.
Oh, okay. If there's no more question, I will entertain a motion.
I move adoption and move forward and purchase the concrete mixer drum.
I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All right. Moving along. Item C, purchase parcel 2421039114 from King County Property Services Division for an open right-of-way. EJ?
So this is a little bit of a cleanup exercise. The map is in your packet. I can pull it up on King County Parcel Viewer if you want me to. But the map is in the packet in the staff memo. So in short, there was a subdivision that was done under King County before the city existed, called the Rosella Lane subdivision. There were two parcels in that were supposed to be dedicated to King County as future road right-of-way. One of them was the eastern parcel. The western parcel was never dedicated by the developer at the time. So that parcel stayed. The developer continued to own it since it was never dedicated. And then in 2003, King County seized the parcel for failure to pay the taxes on it from the developer. So it kind of went full circle. So this is an administrative cleanup. So the minimum value that we can have the parcel transferred to us is $500. King County has agreed to transfer it to us for that minimum amount of funding. There is, just as a clarification, there was two short plats, the Danville Station Division 1 and 2 subdivisions that were done to the north of this parcel. There is an existing trail connection on the Danville properties that's shown on the map. That is a private trail that is owned and maintained by the HOA of the Danville subdivisions. So that is not, there is technically not public access through here to the BPA trail system. That being said, it's on a public street. The public certainly uses it even though it is on the HOA's property today. This does give us the ability in the future to construct a trail if we ever needed to connect to the BPA trail system on public right-of-way. And if we ever did have to go through the condemnation process, if we did not acquire it now, it would be substantially more money to condemn this. So the staff recommendation, the mayor's recommendation is to proceed with the minimum allowable transfer value for right-of-way, which is the $500 to transfer the parcel into unopened city right-of-way.
Councilmember Asafa Dawson would like to know if you can put the map up.
Sure. So as reference, if I zoom out a little bit, the BPA trail, if you can see my cursor hopefully, is this arc right here. 21st Avenue Southwest would be to the west of this. I just lost it when I zoomed out. There it is. So the two parcels, 9044, which is this parcel right here that I just highlighted, that is the one that was dedicated to King County and subsequently transferred to the city when the city incorporated. 9114, which is this parcel on the left, is the one that we are talking about.
Does anybody else have any questions? By the way, Councilmember Asifa Dawson is at the airport, and it's quite noisy, and that's why she has to text her question to Deputy Mayor.
Works for me.
Thank you. All right, if there's no question, I will entertain a motion.
I approve purchase of parcel 24210391114.
Councilmember Dobie?
Doing all the motions.
Yeah, the motions for this meeting are all going to be to consent agenda on May 3rd.
See, here I thought I was reading the right thing. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I move that we send this to a consent agenda for the May 3rd, is it May 3rd council meeting?
Option 1.
Option 1, thank you.
Okay, so the motion to move forward option 1 to the May 3rd consent agenda for approval made by.
Second.
Yes, okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any other questions on this item? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 The matter passed 3-0. Thank you, EJ.
Thank you, council.
And we are moving on to item D, interlocal agreement to share peer services with Des Moines Municipal Court, presented by our own, Your Honor.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. This is more of a housekeeping kind of a issue that Des Moines would like on their end for us to have a MOU on sharing of peer services. There's no fiscal impact. It doesn't change anything about what you approved in terms of our contract with Peer Kent that you approved earlier. And I think Ryan Call could add anything he'd like to on this particular issue, but it was at the request of Des Moines that we formalize that arrangement rather than have it be informal. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have or give you an update of how we're doing with peer services too, if you'd like.
Let's get an update.
Okay, go ahead.
Could we get an update?
Sure. We started February 1st, and that first month, they served, I think, 45 people. And then it's been, they just gave their Q1 report to us, and I believe it's over 75, and that's in 2 months. And we are working with SCORE. We've started, as you know, the city started putting people back in SCORE. Des Moines does not have a place to put the 0.6 peer that we have. We have 1.6 FTEs of peers. So SCORE has talked about letting that peer be housed at SCORE. So they'll be able to serve people at SCORE directly while they're there and help transition them out of SCORE. SCORE has opened up, we just received some emails from them. They're going to open up a number of services they have there at the jail to our defendants as well as Des Moines that exists there at the jail. It's very well received and it's doing wonders because we're able to interact with people at all segments, regardless of where they are. It's not just in community court. It's anytime somebody's in court, they can then interact with a peer who can then line them up with housing, treatment, employment, education, those types of things. So it's working quite well. And I very much appreciate you approving us having that opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, that 45 and 75, is that for the program overall or just the people from Federal Way?
I'm going by memory. No, that's overall, because Des Moines, they had a little bit of delay. They haven't really started utilizing it till April, like middle of April, like not even a week ago, I think. A week or less than 2 weeks ago, they started utilizing the peer services. up to then, they had not really arranged anything with Pier Kent.
Do we know how many are from Federal Way at all?
Well, the vast majority are.
Okay.
And that number included, I think, through the end of March. So I don't think
Oh,
it
so those
includes
numbers
any-
aren't including Kent at all, it's just
Yeah,
Federal
yeah.
Way and Des Moines? Okay,
Yeah, no,
great.
actually, it would only include probably Federal Way, because Des Moines
Because
wasn't
Des
utilized.
Moines hadn't started yet.
Till
Okay.
April.
All right, great,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
we're a little bit behind on our grant in terms of when we were required to have those piers, but it shouldn't be a problem. It just frees up more funds for us to use as time goes on. Because we weren't paying those piers during the month of January, and with Des Moines not till the middle of April. So it's worked okay in that regard. It's helped us, because we'll be able to probably use some of that money to finance more peer services. And the other thing we need to do is maybe open up and have some discussions with the other parts of the city in terms like the police department, to potentially have them be able to refer people to Pier Kent on the Blake referrals. You know, the referrals where somebody's arrested, initially had drugs in their possession and are given those first 2 referrals before they can be charged with a crime. Potentially, the Pier Kent could be used for that. So that kind of discussion could be had to be able to utilize it. Then we're utilizing it across all of the sequential intercepts that we talked about earlier, because law enforcement would then be able to utilize it too. So.
Council President.
Thank you very much. So, Judge, maybe you could just, for the people who are listening and me, maybe you could just describe, well, first of all, my question would be, what's the average misdemeanant charge that somebody has been referred to SCORE jail for? And then the peer support person is somebody who is hired
They
by
work-
the county? Is
Yeah,
that
they work for Pier Kent, which is a nonprofit.
Peer Kent?
So the people that are booked in SCORE, the city uses SCORE, Kent, Issaquah are the primary jails they use. And SCORE, my wager is that about 40 to 50% of the people go to SCORE, okay? And the people that will go there would be domestic violence defendants, potentially, DUIs, people with warrants on thefts and on criminal trespass. So initially, they won't necessarily book people on a theft or a criminal trespass or something like that. But somebody that doesn't show up for court gets a warrant, they'll probably be booked on that warrant at one of the 3 jails. And so that it varies widely on the crimes. But the property crimes that people are mostly concerned about that are associated with behavioral health, normally those are people that get, they either have a number of warrants in other jurisdictions, and we have the new crimes, so those warrants are served, or they get warrants with us and they're ultimately served and they're put in jail.
So thank you. So what is the amount? Because I'm looking for the amount for the contract or for the total amount, or?
I can't recall, it's 200 and, with Pier Kent, it was something like 236,000 in that range for 2 years. And that'll get us 1.6 peer navigators. And then the idea is Des Moines would utilize the 0.6. But what I'm trying to do is also, when we're thinking of this, is not as a Des Moines or a Federal Way peer, because the idea is there might be a person that has cases in Federal Way and Des Moines, and rather than having them work with 2 different people, they work with one for continuity. So it's cross-jurisdictional cooperation, and I think that'll work quite well, especially with the SCORE defendants, because Des Moines has their court in the morning, we have ours in the afternoon. So the peer could be talking to people that are on the calendar in the morning at Des Moines, and then transition to talking to ours that are going to be on in the afternoon, and building those relationships, and then having some kind of transition plan when they get out.
Mhm. So what are the total number of the peers that
We have 1.6 FTEs with Pier Kent, which is, 64 hours a week.
But that amount of money it's a 2-year contract, only goes for 1.6.
Yeah, it's 80,000 for one,
I
and
see.
whatever 0.6 is of 80,000 for the 0.6.
And so how successful has it been? You said it was a success.
Well, it's only been out there for a little bit, but the idea is that the other thing they do is help people show up for court and that type of thing. and make sure they're successful. And the feedback we've gotten from people is it works really well. Now, the ultimate test is, are we going to see people returning to court? And is there going to be recidivism?
Right.
And what we've tried to do is make sure that our peers isn't tied to any specific condition. So in other words, if somebody can show up for a traffic ticket and ask to be referred to a peer and talk to a peer, they're even extended it to family members. And at one point where there's discussion into maybe even having domestic violence victims be able to utilize peer services. So so the idea is that we're trying to make it so that it's completely voluntary on people's part, and then we're looking for the result. Is the person showing up for court? Are they committing new crimes? Are they successful in treatment? Are they doing the things they're supposed to do? And
So
that's
is this
the
similar?
metrics that we need to look at.
Okay, so is this similar to the RCP program through the county?
No,
No.
because that's diversion, and I'm not completely familiar with RCP, but basically all the peers do is help the person, it's peer navigator, help the person navigate. Like for instance, if we sentence somebody, we tell them, go get a drug and alcohol or SUD treatment, substance use disorder treatment. We might tell them to get do other kinds of things, right? And a lot of the folks don't have the capacity to be able to do that, right? They're wondering where their next meal's from. So what a peer does is walk alongside that person and make sure they show up, make sure they're successful. And the peers have been through it before themselves, so they understand. So that really all the stuff that's going on out there, the X factor in all of this is the individual's desire and ability to change. And in the current system, without this peer support, we're leaving them on their own. And is it any wonder people fail?
Well, of
right?
course.
And this, what the peer support does is kind of becomes a crutch until they can stand on their own.
Sure. Can you give us a report at the end of the year?
Sure, I'll be glad to.
That'd be great.
That's
Thank you.
something that other courts are looking at too, about how we're doing it, because there's so much temptation to make it, you have to go see the peer navigator. If you don't see the peer navigator, you're gonna get punished and everything else. It's more successful when the person themselves is deciding for themselves to do it, because that's where the X factor is I can put somebody in jail, I can tell them how great they are, do all kinds of stuff, and until that person themselves decides they're gonna do something different, we're chasing our tail. And so it's getting that person, number one, the desire to do it, and then the tools to be able to do it.
Great. Is there any other questions?
Let me see.
Okay.
Nope.
Nope. Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I move to forward the proposed amendment to the May 3rd, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
I can second that. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any other questions? Seeing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 The matter passed 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We are now moving on to item E, prosecution case management agreement with Cooperative Solutions.
That's correct. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So previously, a few months back, you had the court come before you to talk about software for their systems, and I'm basically here to talk about the prosecutor side of the same situation. So by way of background, for the last 6 or 7 years, we've been using a program called Justware to operate both the prosecution case management and also court case management. So both producing documents inside court as the cases progress with the judge issuing orders, but also the charging documents and all the prosecutor notes and the case notes were kept in a separate portion of the same system. And that product is defunct. It's no longer available. And so the court came to you and got authorization to purchase what they call O-Court. Unfortunately, that only solves the court's side of that loss. It'll serve their needs, but it leaves the prosecutors without a program. So I'm here today to ask for authorization to purchase a program that does case management for the prosecution shop. So we we reviewed 4 different products. There were quite a few products on the market. We focused on the 4 most promising ones. And the one that was overwhelmingly favored both for functionality, the products all had kind of varying degrees of functionality. They all did the core functions pretty similarly, but they didn't all do everything. So this one did the most of what we were looking for. The key things is it has very good integration. They already have a lot of Washington clients. They have over 500 other prosecution clients, and I think something like 20 or 30 in Washington State already. So they've already done a lot of the integration with Washington entities, which is a large expense when you're trying to integrate one program with the Washington State databases or our police spillman database. Those are all extras, and they've already done those integrations for other clients, which is very helpful. Also, they've been in business for longer than everybody else. Obviously, we're a little shy about using a company that's not well established, because basically we sunk a lot of resources into the last software to get it up and running, and just when it was running smoothly, it went defunct. So we're a little gun shy, trying to avoid that again. So this company's been in business for 25 years and is used widely throughout Washington State. And this is what they focus on, is prosecution software. It's also used by King County, and we had a lot of very favorable endorsements from the people that are actually using it in King County. So that's why we went with Carpel. The contract that's before you, it's licenses for 9 users. It also has startup costs for data conversion to get the data out of Justware into the new system. It covers template setup, so we'll have to create or duplicate a lot of the documents that are already in the old system. In our new system, those are charging documents, offer documents, all of the normal pleadings that we have in a criminal case. Will create templates for those things, so the prosecutors can easily and quickly charge cases and make offers and track the cases. There's a data reporting module. That's something I'm very happy to see. In the past, the idea was for Justware to improve our metrics, and frankly, we just never got there with the Justware system. It was never easy to pull out. Like, if someone asked me, how many DUIs did you have last year, that should be a very simple question for me to answer, and the old system didn't answer that question easily. This one does, and I'm very happy for that, because that's useful both for staffing purposes and also just for general understanding of what's going on in the community. And it also includes an interface import or interface with the Spillman database, which is the police database. So we're hoping that we can automate a lot of the case importing from the Spillman database, so we don't have to manually enter names, charges, things like that. So as far as price goes, the total one-time cost for setting this up, this is different than some of the other products. We looked at 3 other products, and they were all straight license per year. This one is you buy the software, and then you pay a user fee for ongoing maintenance, basically, and data storage. So there's a little higher upfront cost, but overall, if you look at a 5-year term, they were all pretty much the same. They were within a range, but they were all pretty much the same cost, all the products. The one-time costs here are $69,100 plus tax, and we put in a 10% contingency because part of the contract is travel for the trainers, and that's, I thought, pretty conservatively estimated. And then there's always the chance that there'll be some module that we just didn't anticipate that we need, that we want to purchase. So we're asking for a 10% contingency. I hopefully won't have to spend it, but we don't want to have to come back to council if there's a minor cost overrun. So all in, it's $82,989.10 for the first year startup and the first year of operation. And then after that, the ongoing costs would be $16,000 a year, and that would be in the IT budget. It would be part of the normal biennial budgeting process. So that is my pitch. The mayor's recommendation, of course, is to purchase the software, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
I just have one question. I'm totally okay with this, but in my world, I work with software all the time. Nobody puts a contingency in. You get a bid that says this is what it's going to be, you know what it is.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a pet peeve. We always have 10% contingency because maybe somebody's not willing to put in writing what they're really going to do, or, I mean, I understand on road projects and things like that, but 10% contingency on software seems kind
It's a
of
fair point, and it's
like
not something I've ever
a
asked for
bad
before.
practice, a bad practice, in my opinion.
Fair enough. And it's a fair point. It's not something I've ever asked for before. The contingency is mostly to cover unexpected travel costs. So they estimated travel 6 months ago, and when they actually are going to be doing the travel, it's going to be a year from now, basically. So I don't know. So
So the contingency is because airfare's going up, that they couldn't give
And-
us a real number?
they didn't give, the contingency does not come from them. This was my idea. So it's to avoid having to come back for cost overruns. The contract just says you'll pay for travel.
Okay, so we're going to pay for travel, which is an unknown. I understand
Yeah.
it's going up tremendously, but,
Right.
okay.
Is there any other questions? Go ahead.
With the ongoing annual fee, 16,000 and a little, on the previous program that is now defunct, what was the annual fee on it?
I don't know. Honestly, I was not involved with the purchase or administration of that program. It was through the courts and IT department. So I do know that both of these products, both OCORT and the prosecution by carpel, are more money than they were for Justware, which is probably part of the reason that Justware, frankly, the Justware people didn't stop offering a product. They said, we're not going to offer this product, and they made a new one that costs 2 or 3 times as much. So,
Ryan, Councilmember Walsh, one of the things, I don't remember right off the top of my head, I don't have the exact figure, but I believe it was somewhere around $18,000 a year is what we paid for Justware, all in. So dividing that back out into several systems to do the one job that Justware did is going to cost more on an annual basis. But what we had in the budget was around $18,000.
Okay, thank you.
Ryan, I do have sorry, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
This is a question from Councilmember Seffi. If they're consultants, why don't they include the cost for travel?
they gave us an estimate.
Okay, and that's for a year from now?
Well, that's when I expect them to be here. So they'll come out once as a kind of a pre-thing, just one guy probably, and then we have 4 trainers that come out at the end after we're up and running to train us how to use the system, and that's, I think, the bulk of the travel costs.
So it'll take a year for this system to be up and running?
I hope not. That's the estimate that I got. A lot of people we're not the only ones that were using Justware in Washington State, so they have quite a few clients that are asking, that are signing up. So that was the conservative estimate they gave us. So worst case scenario, in my mind, is a year.
Okay, thank you.
Committee member Erica Norton, go ahead.
Hi, how will this system work with Oakport? Is it possible for it to be integrated or to work with Oakport, or is that are these 2 separate things that we're dealing with?
They do separate functions. So OCORT is for
Okay.
tracking the court docket and what the judge does in the courtroom in issuing orders. This is the other side, which is all the prosecution stuff. So I would say very little integration. I think that we'll be forwarding the charging documents probably outside of this system, just sending them to the court. But there's very little integration. The integration piece that's important
Okay,
is,
and so,
for me, the important integration piece is it will integrate with the state's GIS system, which is the court docket system for the entire state. So that's good. And then it will integrate with evidence.com, which is the database for all of the body cam footage. And it will also integrate with the Spillman database, which is the actual police file. So that's where we're going to get a lot of labor saved, was with those integrations.
that's good. So is it possible, I had a meeting with Judge Larson, and he was showing me about how the Oakport system worked and I was just wondering, so they don't need to fill anything in with the prosecuting attorney's documentation, and you don't need to, there's nothing that you don't meet together and enter in data into OCORT, anything from the prosecuting attorney's side? I was just asking.
Honestly, we haven't.
Am I making sense?
You are. In the past, a lot of the original data entry under Justware was done by the prosecution shop, and it was kind of imported in to Justware. I'm not sure how the court's going to be doing that now, ingesting the charging data. I don't know if they have to manually type it
Okay.
in. It's something we can look at, but the
Okay.
interaction between prosecution and court is basically the charging document and motions filed. So in a traditional court setting, we kind of just send those to the court and they do with them, they process them. So that's kind of how this will
Okay.
run. But we can look at it. There might be, for integration, it's a cost benefit thing. Sometimes it costs more to automate something that's cheaper just to do manually.
Okay, and that's just me thinking about streamlining. Okay, thank you. I appreciate you answering my questions.
Of course.
Ryan, I do have a question. Under the financial impacts, you mentioned that the startup costs could potentially be shifted to ARPA funds. Can you explain that a little bit?
If the council so desires. So we did earmark this as one of the items on the lost revenue category. So I'm sure you've seen some of the preliminary emails from Director Groom, but we have more money, more asks than we have money for under that category. So if council chose, they could fund this through that program. And that was the original idea, but either way, we need to buy it. So right now, we're putting it in the general fund.
It's clearly a necessity, and the council could ultimately choose to dedicate ARPA funds, but if not, we'll absorb it in the general fund. It's something we need to do.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there any other questions? Seeing none?
I move to forward the proposed agreement to the May 3rd, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
And I can second that. Is there any other questions? Seeing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No matter pass 3-0. And now we are moving on to item F. Proposed MOU related to structured settlement of all local government opioid damages claims. Ryan?
Thank you, Chair Tran. So this one is much more complicated to describe. So let me start by telling you what this isn't. So this is not an offer of settlement. This is not a settlement agreement. The firm that's listed here, Keller Rohrbach, they do not represent the city. So we have not sued these companies. Keller Rohrbach does have clients. They have, I forget exactly how many, 20 or more than 20 Washington municipalities that are suing these three, they call them the big three, the three opioid distributors plus Johnson & Johnson. And then the state of Washington is also suing them. So, but it's important to know that this firm does not represent the city or the city's interests. They're trying to get us to agree with them to kind of go in to a structured negotiation to settle claims. So to understand this, a little background, why this is important, a little background is helpful. Keller Rohrbach is one of several firms that handled nationally litigation against these companies. There was a national settlement that covered a lot of states and a lot of municipalities, mostly states, but there's a formula in there of how the money gets split up. Basically, our state opted out of that. Washington State, the Washington State Attorney General didn't think, I can't speak for him, but I think ultimately we weren't getting enough. So Washington State is suing them directly, and I believe that litigation is currently pending in King County. Keller Rohrbach is not a part of that. Obviously, that's the Attorney General doing that. They have clients that they're trying to negotiate a settlement with. And basically, the big three, all these defendants, the big three plus Johnson & Johnson, have made it clear, and this, me reading a little bit between the lines, but have made it clear that they're not really interested in doing this piecemeal. They want to have a global, if they're going to negotiate, they want to see a global resolution that clears all of the municipal claims. So this firm doesn't represent everybody in Washington State. There's 250 cities in the state. And so what they're trying to do is create what they're calling the One Washington MOU, which is kind of a show of, everybody has agreed to this structure in concept, and then if the defendants agree, then we could work on a settlement under that structure. So this is just basically an entry into the negotiations for them. And I can talk a little bit about the structure of the proposed way to negotiate the settlement or how the settlement would work. But this is all very hypothetical because there is no settlement on the table right now. We have not sued any on our own behalf. The litigants is how the MOU describes the people who have sued. So all of the litigants need to sign off on this, and then it's unclear how many of the big cities in Washington need to sign off to be interesting to the defendants. We're trying to get everybody. That's the goal of the Keller Roebuck law firm. But at a minimum, they need all the big players to make it worth settling. So just a little bit about describing what is in the document. First off, the first premise of all of this is that settlement, any money that's given as settlement for this would have to be used for opioid-related issues. So treatment of opioid dysfunction, mitigation of people that are on it, prevention of people getting hooked on drugs, and then law enforcement. There are some law enforcement uses for this money. It's a very long list of approved uses. They're all in the appendix of the document. And it's pretty broad, but they all have a nexus to opioid. There's no, as they described it, there's no way we're going to be able to fill potholes with this money. This is going to be strictly related to drugs and the impacts of drugs, specifically opioids. The allocation structure is kind of the meat of the whole thing. It's not loosely, it's based entirely on the settlement structure they used in the national case. So they're basically just applying that same structure to Washington State. And basically how it works is they have criteria for how much the counties get, and then municipalities is a formula that they basically came up with based on how much money each city has spent historically, according to the feds, on opioid mitigation. So if you look at the number that's in Appendix B, it's this super long percentage that starts with 0.306%. It's got like 10 digits. And hypothetically, the example I have in my staff report is if the overall settlement was for $500 million, if that was the settlement amount, then we would get 1.5 million. So that's just to put that in perspective. $500 million is not a number I just pulled out of the air. That's loosely what Colorado settled for, all of the municipalities in Colorado. So it's not a crazy, unrealistic number. But that's kind of what we're looking at. The ballpark of, I would guess, between $1 and $2 million is kind of what we might anticipate. 1.5 is a reasonable guess. That's how much. How it's allocated, there would be, basically, they would split Washington State up into 9 territories. It's based largely on geography, but it doesn't really matter for us because ours would be King County. King County is both a region and a county and everything, so it would be through King County. King County, and it wouldn't be the government of King County, it would be someone administering it, and hopefully it would be an entity in King County would set up what they call the Opioid Abatement Council, which is kind of the watchdog group that makes sure everybody uses their money. They're the people that dole the money out and make sure we're using it for proper purposes. So they're the kind of the accountability arm of the settlement. And then attorney's fees are separate. is the main takeaway. There would be a separate fund that's not part of the overall settlement. It's a part of the settlement, but it's not part of the takeaway. It's not part of our 1.5 million. And it's 15% for this fund of the total collection. So I did put some pros and cons in here. I think they're pretty easily stated. I do have an executive session scheduled before the next meeting to discuss litigation strategies if council wants to discuss it. These are things I'm comfortable talking about in public. Pros, I do believe that this is the most likely way that the city would get paid in this. We've seen, I mean, the reason we're even talking about this is 20 cities together wasn't enough. Basically, these defendants that we'll see in court is kind of what their response was. So it takes a lot of people working together to negotiate a settlement, and that's what we've seen nationally. And there have been litigation, like sometimes they go to court and win, but this would be a very tough case to prove in court. Like, not tough necessarily, but expensive, I guess I should say. We'd have to show the damages to the city, which is, when you're talking about this type of case, is many, we could easily spend $1 million litigating this case. So I don't anticipate suing directly to ever amount to more actual dollar recovery for the city. Cons, I mean, we're giving up. So once again, this is not an actual settlement. This is us agreeing to a structure to talk about a settlement. But once we go down this path, I think we would obviously never be able to settle or sue directly. If we sue directly, we would have to just go to court because we probably would have burned that bridge, basically. So once we're committed to this, we kind of need to stick with it or sue to the bitter end. And I don't think it's cost effective to sue to the bitter end on this. Those are the cons. So overall, given that we haven't actually instigated litigation on our own, and I think it would be of dubious utility to do so, I think this is by far the most cost-effective way to maybe get some money out of these defendants. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Ryan. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. So the first question is from Councilmember Dawson, and then I have a question. Can we hire chemical dependency or addiction specialists with the funds?
Yes.
Okay. So my question is, if we were to do this, and if the state gets a settlement, would we still get money from the state settlement?
That's unknown. That would be up to the state on how they want to spend that money. Historically, the state's not been great about sharing that kind of money with the local municipalities. I would suspect they'd probably set up some kind of regional program, but I don't know if they would trickle down to our level.
So when you talked about damages to the city, what are you talking about when you say that?
Well, the metric they used in the MOU is actual money we've spent on this problem. So there's a federal metric, and I don't have the name of it in front of me.
It's not like damages to property or?
No. It's money we've spent trying to address the problem, not, I mean, honestly, if you start getting into the second and third order effects of opioid dysfunction, I mean, that's everybody, right?
Right.
We've all suffered from that. So, no, this is more first order, like money we've actually spent to try to prevent or address opioid stuff. So the federal government has data on past opioid-related expenditures that they track. And just looking at our percentage compared to other cities' percentage, we're like half of what Renton's percentage was. So other cities have spent more just hard money on this problem than we have. So that's where that number comes from. But it isn't broken windows and broken lives and all that stuff.
So then this means that we would be suing these drug companies?
No, it doesn't. So that's the nice thing about this is we don't actually have to instigate a lawsuit. It's if basically we all agree to this structure, and if they offer a settlement, it would be in lieu of, we give up our right to sue.
Okay.
But we haven't actually sued anyone.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dovey?
Yeah, so when I look at the attorney fees, you know, I'm just using the numbers you put in there, 500 million. So they're gonna take 15% of the 500 million on a contingency, is that kind of what they're proposing?
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
So we're not gonna get, if we get into this, nobody's gonna come and say, now it's your turn to put 100,000 in for the,
No, they're paid directly from that fund.
they're looking at this as a business opportunity to make a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
and to
which
be
is fine.
fair,
Yeah.
absolutely, and to be fair, I mean, they've been running this on a contingency basis, and
Okay.
my understanding is they've been litigating this for 5 years with, I'm not sure how much money they've spent on this, but if I
Yeah.
had to guess, it's probably
It's a big number.
15, $20 million.
Have they won any cases?
Yeah, I mean, they were part of the national settlement.
Okay. And then the money that would come to the city, we don't send that to King County. We're not being part of anything like we've done in the past. It's actually gonna, the city will administer it?
Yes, so how it says in the MOU is that it first goes to that opioid, whatever council, opioid abatement council, and then we would basically say, here's what we're gonna do with this, give us the money, and then they
Okay.
would give
so-
it to us.
So we're not signing up to be in, giving our money to some other governmental entity to do what they think is best for Federal Way. We will have control if and when this gets done.
Yes. If we don't spend the money, I think it stays at the regional level, and then they could
But-
spend it.
But the regional level can't say, you're gonna do this. We get to tell the regional level what we're gonna do with our share of the money.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Council President Kochma?
Sure, thank you, Chair. So, other than hiring counselors, what are some other ways that we would use the money?
If you look at Appendix A, there's 10 pages of things, but it's all, so alcohol, drug, rehabilitation, prevention, training, school propaganda to keep kids from even being interested in drugs, law enforcement to a certain degree, drug enforcement, like drug interdiction is possible. So those are the main things that come to the top of my head. I mean, it's a long list.
So would that be something that we would hire somebody to oversee?
How we spend the money is a whole other discussion. So I suspect that there's going to be economies of scale for a lot of this stuff, and that we might want to go in with some other city or a regional response. But if we have a good idea and we can do it on our own, we can do that.
So you mentioned that we would receive half of what Renton would,
That was what I recall.
so
If you-
does that mean Renton has double the amount of opioid problems that we have?
And that's just a very rough estimate that I threw out there, but yes, if you look at those percentages, they're
Interesting.
based on how much money we've spent.
Huh.
So they, according to the federal government, spent more money than we did on this problem.
Thank you.
So kind of following up on that, in other words, a wealthier city that spent more money on it will end up getting more money.
Yes.
It'll,
I think that's fair. I think because they're characterizing loss or damages to first order, what we actually spent on it, yeah, cities that had more money to spend are getting some. And that's one of the things that came to my head too, and I think that that's part of why Washington State is suing directly, is because they used a similar mechanism for divvying up the state money. And I think that was the Attorney General's point, is our losses aren't measured by how much we spent on this problem, because sometimes we didn't have the money to spend.
okay. So now this Keller Rohrbach, the firm, are they the only firm that's doing this, or are there other firms that are trying to accomplish the same thing?
They're the only ones that are trying to organize this kind of mass, like unified response in Washington State. So there's been other firms that did handle things in other states, but they have, I want to say 25 municipal clients in Washington, and they're mostly counties and the big cities.
Yeah. What larger cities are already on board with
I
it?
don't know. I think it's Tacoma was one. They're mostly counties.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. So if we were to enter this, when would you expect to see a settlement?
I mean, whether or not there is a settlement is an open question.
Okay.
So they'd have to negotiate it. So I think that I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to answer that. I think it depends on, I think part of the Attorney General's lawsuit is driving this, and that they might want to settle either contemporaneously with that or before that. So then it would be fairly quickly. But motivations to settle are hard to divine. Like, people do it for different reasons.
So are they trying to get every city in the state or just larger cities?
Their target is every city over 10,000 people.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Dovey?
A question is, they go through this, we're talking about the main companies that do opiates, right, that they're trying to,
It's the three largest distributors
Purdue-
and then
Purdue
the
and-
manufacturer.
but.
Not Purdue, it's just
not-
Johnson
they
&
go- They
Johnson.
went bankrupt, didn't they? I
It's
mean-
not Purdue.
Oh, it's not Purdue?
So it is, I wrote it down. McKesson, Cardinal Health, Amerisource Bergen, which are the distributors, and then Johnson & Johnson, which is the manufacturer.
So they left out the big guy that went for bankrupt, I think, or something.
Probably, yeah.
Mr. Walsh?
So if there's not a settlement, then after that, if there was no settlement and it was a thing of the past, we'd be able to join with other groups or whatever to try to do an actual suit, then, it sounds like.
Yes,
Okay.
that's true.
Thank you, Ryan, for that information and good discussion. Any other questions for Ryan? Seeing none?
Well,
I move to forward the proposed MOU to the May 3rd, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
I will second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any other questions?
I have a
discussion?
question.
Deputy Mayor?
I'm sure that when members of the public read the title of this, they're going to have questions, so should it be under business instead of consent? I mean, it could be easily pulled from consent, then you
It could
have to.
be. I defer to council on that. I put it on consent because, one, I don't want to create the false impression
True.
that we are in fact settling, because we're not. This is very preliminary. I don't know how well, I mean, this is a difficult thing to explain to people. So
Yeah.
I think, to me, my personal take on it was, I thought it'd be more appropriate that if it actually comes down to, we're going to get some money and here's the deal, then I would make a more public show of it.
Okay,
That was my thought.
okay, thank you.
All right. Is there any other questions? Seeing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. The matter passed 3-0. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
And now we are moving on to item G, Washington Learning Source Interlocal Cooperative Purchasing Agreement. Thomas?
Good evening, Chair Tran, Deputy Mayor, Council President, and committee and council members. I have before you quite a mouthful. The WLS, Washington Learning Source, is a mouthful. However, it can streamline and save us some money. So that's the gist of it. Ultimately, it is a cooperative purchasing program that the city can be a part of. We have joined many others very similar to it. Just the reason that we're doing this is some other vendors can partner with this cooperative purchasing agreement for goods that we need or goods or services that we need, whereas they don't on the others. So that being said, this would be a cooperating purchasing agreement that the city can buy off of, as I said. It is allowed to, or we are allowed to, based on RCW Chapter 3934. However, council authorization is required. And we will be joining many educational districts throughout Washington State, virtually all of them, it seems like, and including a couple of local agencies such as CTAC and Yakima for cities and other universities in higher education. So with that, any questions?
Any question for Thomas? You get off easy.
I'm pretty sure on the next one, I'll pay for that.
I move forward the proposed interlocal agreement to the May 3rd, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
I can second that. Is there any other question? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. The matter passed 3-0. You have the next one, item H, Broadband Planning Study RFP Consultant Selection.
Now, this is going to be the fun one. And quite a bit longer, unfortunately. So bear with me as I pull it up here. All right. So before you tonight is RFP Broadband Planning Study. So we've done an RFP, and now we want to actually send this and hire the respondent of the RFP to actually do the work for us. So a brief summary of how we get there. So we're going to jump in the time machine, and we're going to go back to a land in a world pre-COVID, moments before the shutdown at the 2020 City Council retreat, at which Council had a great retreat. There was lots of discussion, and one of them was, this is a direct quote from the minutes, city government will develop a plan to realize our 2030 vision of becoming a tech hub. And as part of that, there were 3 components that were identified then: study fiber optics for ROI, offer training opportunities for tech jobs, and city government to lead tech hub development. So where we are is really the bolded and with the red arrow there that shows us. Now, this broadband planning study is kind of the horse pulling the cart the proper way. If we were to just dive into fiber optic study, I think that would be a mistake. And the reason for that is that's a little bit cart before the horse, because we need to understand the needs and what this community is all about before we actually decide that fiber optic is the way that we need to go. So that's where we're at. So with that direction, Tim Johnson and his army of interns set off on developing the Tech Hub plan, which you guys have seen. He also found an awesome grant, and on September 7th of last year, City Council approved entering into the Community Economic Revitalization Board grant, or CERB. And that is a $50,000 grant, which we'll discuss a little bit later, with a $25,000 match from the city. So the little bit of details on the RFP. So again, economic development led by Tim Johnson wrote the RFP. They put it out. We sent it directly to 4 consultants that we knew of that came highly recommended to us. We also published it in the Federal Mirror and the Seattle Daily Journal of Commerce. That was published on March 4th of this year, and submissions were due almost a month later on April 1st. We only received, however, for being open for about a month, 2 responses, one from Government Technology Group, based out of Interlocal, California, and the other one from AMDR Enterprises, both of which we hadn't heard of before, nor did we solicit directly. What was interesting is we did solicit Magellan Advisors, who Jory Wolf is the guy's name, which was a former CIO for City of Santa Monica, and he was the leader in the Santa Monica CityNet, is now on kind of the board of directors and very involved in Magellan Advisors. They specialize in this stuff. They couldn't do this, so they outsourced it to these guys, Government Technology Group, and that's how they got a hold of us. It's a good thing, though. Stay tuned. So we defined in the RFP a scoring criteria, and on the left column, we have the category that we're going to be scoring them with a total amount of points. And then we have scored them based on their responses to the RFP. So Government Technology Group, as you saw, got a full score. I really couldn't deduct any points from them. And if you went through the RFP, the response, you'd see why. They actually are pretty solid. AMDR, on the other hand, also looked like they were solid, but as you kind of dug through the RFP, we had to deduct some points from them. So the reason why 7 points out of 30 for AMDR is because their total cost came in at $250,000. Our total budget that we had put into the RFP was 60. Our estimated budget was 60. So you can see that that was a big difference, and so we scored them accordingly. Secondly is firm experience. So there's no doubt that this firm has a lot of experience in a lot of things. What we're specifically looking for this particular project, we also knocked them because they solicited, or they identified an IHS Towers project that they worked on, which is a telecom in Nigeria, one of the large telecom in Nigeria that they did work for, which is great, but it's not here in the States, and it's a telecom company that they're working for, not a city government. They also have some big names, like they've done work for Honda and Sally Mae and 7-Up, so good stuff, but still, again, not city government based. The reason we did 1 point on the approach to fulfilling scope is because they basically just copy and pasted our RFP scope into their scope and said, yeah, this is what we're going to do. Community and stakeholder engagement, they did have some philosophy in there, which was good, so we gave them 10 points. And the timeline, it came back at 18 months versus the end of the year, which is what we were targeting. So I probably could have given them a couple more points for that, but instead of ending on December of this year, it was going to end and conclude on September of next year, which is a problem for both the grant and for our timeline. So we came out with 100 points for Government Technology Group and 39 for AMDR. A couple key highlights for Government Technology Group. Their total RFP cost came in at $59,670, and we'll get to that a little bit later. They have experience working with other cities, mainly in California, Modesto, Merced, Concord, Ventura, Fremont, to name a few, also Marin County. They also do work, or they have done work, and they've listed it in their references for like city IT strategic plans, which is also a good thing. They also have experience working with those cities and others, as you can see here, on similar projects. So City of South San Francisco, their fiber ISP feasibility study, that's kind of in the same ballpark that we're talking about here. Monero Valley, fiber master plan, and then City of San Leandro, wireless master plan. And then they have a timeline that they proposed that it would be complete by 2022 at the end, so December. So I did add a couple of slides in here, Terry, while I was over there, so apologize. A couple of things here. So I wanted to highlight this because I think the way that they approach their scope is important to discuss with council. And I divided it into two sections, the core scope that they have and then additional. The biggest thing is asset inventory. They just look at how they're going to approach this project. They're going to look at what's in the ground, what fiber optic exists, what projects are there in there for potential expansion, the technology and trends, like what's happening with municipal wireless, municipal broadband. What is available here? They're going to look at Comcast. They're going to look at CenturyLink. They're going to look at the wireless services as well from Verizon, the home 5G to the home products that every of the cellular carriers are going to be allow or releasing, and they're trying to get customers signed up for that as well. They're also going to look at a needs and goals assessment of our community. So part of that is forming a broadband advisory task force, which the deputy mayor and council president are aware of, and that's going to include key community stakeholders, not only from city, but also Federal School District across the street, Lake Haven, South King Fire, looking at the hospital sector, the business sector. We're looking at multifamily. We're looking at hotel, et cetera. So we want a wide variety of stakeholder engagements to really figure out what this community needs. How's it being served right now? Where are the pain points, and what do we need moving forward? And then they're going to look at all that data and do a gap analysis. Where are we? What do we need? And where should we be? Additionally, and this is kind of where they kind of turn the corner a little bit into some of the other experience that they have, and that's what would broadband look like if the city was able to undertake that? What would the business model look like? How would the plan get implemented? And what opportunities out there for grants and other funding? State and federal, there's a lot of things coming up. that would potentially, after this report is done, and if council wants to move forward with something, which we don't know what that would be yet, that this could be a perfect timeline for some federal and state funding. And also a key thing is digital inclusion. And they mention it for like the aged population. One of the key things is like access to telehealth. A lot of electronic medical stuff these days. And if you don't have the right broadband or capability, you're going to get left in the dark. In addition to like on the younger side with distance learning. So it's really a good scope, and I really enjoyed kind of the way that they were going to approach this project. So that all being said, the total cost presented, as noted before, $59,670, and you can see both respondents, RFP respondents, the prices are there. Quite a big difference. I did add a contingency in here, and the reason is if, for whatever reason, we come up with something later down the line in our broadband advisory task force meetings, and it elicits maybe a little bit of extra work that wasn't originally in the plan, the consultants agreed to, and it's going to be in the contract, $195 an hour for any additional work. And so we wanted to be able to do that without having to come back and ask for additional authorization. So that's the reason for the contingency. I don't think we're going to use it, but just in case, that's what it is. That's what it's for. And then we add tax and total. So $74,894.20. Funding source is this. So the RFP budget estimation, we put at $60,000, and that was basically, that number came from the CERB group. We talked to them and we said, well, they worked with a lot of these planning studies, and they said, you know, for a city your size, it'll be around 60,000 would be a good thing to target. The grant's going to cover 50. We're going to add 25 to that, add 75 total budget, and then if we all in, based on this slide, we're at $74,894.20. Now, the one important thing here is the agenda bill in front of you states a different number, and that is because I added contingency, but I didn't add tax. And we always pay sales and use tax on pretty much everything that we do. So that does need to be updated on the agenda bill, so noted for the record, if committee approves this. So that all being said, I know that was a mouthful, quite a bit longer than I had anticipated, but I think it was important to spend quite a bit of time on this. So I'm open for any questions.
Thank you. Is there any question? Wow.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, what you gonna say?
So,
Go ahead.
yeah, great presentation. Of the other cities they've worked with and their references and stuff, how many have you talked to check things out?
So I haven't actually directly fact checked these people. Based on their responses and what I've known and what Tim Johnson has uncovered, this stuff checks out. He did quite a bit of work on San Leandro about their fiber and wireless broadband master plan that they've done. That's listed on here. Jory Wolf, if he's putting his name on the line, I've done quite a bit of study very extensively on the Santa Monica CityNet. That's a good recipe for the way municipal broadband should have been. I've talked to these guys in person. They have, I believe what they've said checks out, especially based on what we've done. But have I done any actual, like calling them up, all these references and said, okay, how did they work? I haven't done to that degree.
Do you think there'd be any wisdom in doing that, just to double? I mean, you know, I'm
Yeah.
confident also, but in the past I've found out that even when you're confident, it's good to double check nonetheless.
For sure. And what I can do, what I can promise to you is, because this is going to be going back for city council approval at our next city council meeting, I can go through and do that fact check. And if you want, I can give an update report on what I found. I'd be happy to do that.
Great. That sounds great. Yeah. I mean, it sounds
Yeah.
great to me, but like I say, I think it's always wise to
Yep.
double check.
Agreed.
Committee members, Erica Norton, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. So from what I'm understanding, this is someone who's doing a study to tell us how much, or, okay, so this is we're paying somebody to do a bid. Is that what this is? I'm still a little confused about studies and why we do them. Because can't we just ask people to bid on it? And that's free? Can you explain to me why a study is important, please? Just
Sure. So the reason we're doing a study is to find, this is really a needs analysis of what we're trying to do. With that being said, there are providers in the city. Comcast and CenturyLink are two wireline-based providers of internet service, both to residential and commercial. And then there's also a whole bunch of wireless providers, such as Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T, that operate within the city of Federal Way. What this is doing is saying, because what we've heard, especially through COVID, is that there is a deficit of broadband in the city. We've also, Tim Johnson, if he was here, would tell you that he's received several calls from local businesses that have had a huge challenge finding adequate internet and broadband availability within the city, especially in our downtown core. Now, not to say that Comcast or CenturyLink doesn't serve that, but there could be some challenges there. And there's also other areas in the residential side as well. There's no provider that serves 100% of City of Federal Way to every single parcel and every single address point. But that being said, this study is hiring somebody that's going to look at what our community needs from that stakeholder group, look at what the service is provided, and if there is a gap. Maybe it comes out that, I'm just throwing this out there, I don't want to, if any provider is watching this, this is not meant, this is a hypothetical. Let's just say Comcast has a particular area or neighborhood that is lacking in coverage. Maybe all that we need to do is have an agreement with them and say, we want you to fix or add additional coverage in this particular area. And that's all it is. And then maybe the city is served appropriately. We don't know that though. And so hiring this consultant to come in and do that work, do that analysis, look at the needs of the community and look at what is being provided at what service level is what you are approving tonight, is that consultant to do that work. I hope that answered the question.
it does. Thank you. So it's paying someone to do research then?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm really literal with my words, so I'm like, study? Why can't you just do that yourself? Okay, I get it. Thank you. I appreciate the explanation.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you, Thomas. Any other questions? Mr. Dovey, would you like to make the motion, please?
Yeah, I'll move to forward the proposed broadband planning study consultant selection to the May 3rd, 2020 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
I have an additional question.
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
This is from Councilmember Seffidasen. Low-income households without children were not included. Can we add them to the study?
Yeah, so we could, that was actually part of our presentation to CERB. And that's also why, one of the reasons we're inviting multifamily, especially Uptown Square, to be a part of this, is because they can actually, on the task force that is, we can make sure, we want them to be a part of that because we know that it's all low income. And it's a goal of I think Federal Way, that if we really want to be a tech hub, and this is speaking outside of this particular deal, if we want to be a tech hub, we should probably offer some sort of a wireless or service somehow at a substantially reduced cost. Now, whether that's a provider doing that, Comcast has their Internet Essentials plan, which offers you 25 megabits down and 3 up, which is a good start. But if you have 2 people working from home, it's going to start taxing that line. And if you have multiple kids trying to do education, it's also going to be a little bit less. And also the FCC is looking at increasing what is considered broadband from 25 and 3 up to potentially 300 and 100 or more. So that is a challenge, and I think that low-income groups definitely need to be a part of this, and that's why they will be a part of the task force. I hope that answers that question. We can definitely add low income to the scope when we execute the agreement with them, for sure.
And an additional question from myself is, when do you expect the task force to start meeting?
Next month, in May.
Okay, thank you.
And it'll meet every month after that until the study is completed.
Okay, thanks.
Great. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This matter passed 3-0. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
Okay, now we are moving on to item I, an additional full-time community development office Tech 2 position request. Brian Davis.
Oh. All right, sorry.
Thank you, Chair Schran, members of the committee and council. So I'm here as the Community Development Director to ask for additional staff to help with the front counter as you walk into the lobby there. The receptionist there welcomes people, but they also process passports. We're a passport agent for the Department of State. Right now, we're operating about 3.5 hours a day, and with the addition of another, and it pays for itself. And so with the addition of another one, that'll allow us to be open for more hours. The demand, we're booked until July, so we don't see that slowing down with the requirements of air travel being more emphasis with passports. We also have quite a large Spanish-speaking contingency that like our office, and so we are popular, to say the least. And so this is a request to add staff, which pays for itself, no impact to the general fund. Happy to answer any questions.
That's great. Any questions? Mr. Rovi, you have questions?
I'm ready to move the motion.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, I move forward option 1 for the May 3rd, 2022 consent agenda for city council approval.
And I can second that. Any other question for Mr. Davis? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, so the matter passed 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was easy.
Oh, you shouldn't say that.
All right, we are moving to item J, AP vouchers 3/16/2022 through 4/15/2022, and payroll voucher from March 1st of 22 until March 31st of 22.
Yeah.
Mr. Chase.
Yeah, good evening, Council Chair Tran, Deputy Mayor Honda, Council President Coach Marr, and Council Committee members. Before you are the AP vouchers in the amount of $3,159,090.16, and payroll vouchers in the amount of $4,241,327.35. And they're within the range of prior months. And I believe we sent an email response to Deputy Mayor Honda before the meeting on some of her questions, and we'd be happy to answer any others that you may have.
Any other questions? Deputy.
I move to forward the vouchers to the May 3rd, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other questions? Concern? Seeing none, hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The matter passed 3-0. Thank you. All right, we are at the last item. Monthly financial report for March 2022. Mr. Steve Groom.
Quick screen share, and we should be in business. We are. Good evening. This is the usual monthly accountability report. The city is 3 months into the current year, which means that we've got some revenue and some expenses to report on. The reason that the first quarter is kind of important is that you adopted a budget for the biennium quite a while ago, and we are kind of on the home stretch. This is the first quarter of the second year, so I want to bring you up to date on where the city's at, what the financial status is. Not only the financial status, we'll talk about cash and investments and also talk about some revenue. In your packet, you have got the usual memo, and that's where we don't want to bury the lead. We want to put the headline right up front, and it's good news. As we start this year, 3 months in, revenues are favorable. Fairly significant amount. Revenues are favorable to budget. We try to track about proportionally every month as the year progresses, and revenues are up 4%, 262,000. Expenses are also favorable by 1.9%, and this is what it looks like on a graph. The revenue on the left, there's the 262,000, which doesn't look like much, but it's positive, and also on the expense side as well. The top the top bar charts are whole dollars, and then the bottom graph just shows it as a percent. So the main thing is that revenue is up, expenses are down. That's what you want. That's what we would like to see. And as we get through the first quarter, that kind of gives me a sigh of relief as we get into any contingency discussions, any course correction discussions. Sales tax revenue. This chart we try to show consistently. The shaded triangle, the shaded blue or shaded gray, that's how we budgeted the cumulative sales tax to play out for the remainder of the year. The little thin blue line, that's how sales tax tracked last year. And we're up just a little bit. Budget year to date now we get sales tax from the state on a 2-month lag. So we just report it as we receive it. So here we've only got 2 months of actual data points, but still it's positive. Now, while we're on sales tax, in the past couple of FedRec meetings, we've said, well, what does that look like on a trend basis? What does that look like pre-COVID? So if I show you a chart that shows 2019, 2020, 21, 22, this is comparing the same point in time, the same first couple of months, the last 4 years. You can see that we're ahead of 2019. Well, that's comforting. And also, if we look at sales tax, I think there was a particular interest in looking at it by location. We have to be real careful. We don't want to we can't identify any particular retailers. That's protected information. I want to keep us out of trouble. But in total, I'm sorry, let me back up just a touch. I can give you some numbers. You can see on the graph here that the total is $947,000 in 2022. It's only $2,500 different from 2021, but compared to the prior years, why it's up considerably. So when we look at specific locations, the largest area is the retail block down at 348th, and that decreased $5,900 from prior year. And it's up $119,000 from 2019. And then you can see that is the most significant retail area that has influenced the whole entire city. The rest are kind of consistent. We know that we've got some vacancies. For example, in the Commons, I think they're operating without a major tenant that has yet to open. So there's some upside potential there. That just I want to give you the statistics and the numbers, but we all know our city. We know what's going on in those areas. So this just gives you a comparison with some specific geographic areas, and I think you know which stores are pretty much the main ones there. And then the other, also good news for as we play out during this year, utility tax revenue is favorable to budget. And so that just means that, good for us. We budgeted cautiously and revenue is coming in. We want to always budget with but we always want to adopt a budget that we can actually achieve, hopefully do better than budgeted. And the same is true with real estate excise tax. That's the one that we just call REIT. Last year, the actuals or the thin blue line, that really exceeded budget, and it looks like that the volume of real estate transactions and the property valuations are supporting our budget as the year plays out. That gives me hope and encouragement. Lastly, we always kind of point out where the cash balances are, and as this year plays out, we continue to have some strong cash balances. Now that $9 million of that is because we know that we received ARPA funds that we really haven't expended, but we expect to, so we want to keep an eye on that. But the investing activity that you know that we started back in October, we continue to do that very slowly and cautiously because we know that rates are rising. The investments that we purchased this month, they didn't quite achieve a yield of 2%, but then one of them was a 3-year, and then the other 3 were 1-year maturities. The yield curve has really flattened out. We know that anything between 2 years and 10 years is just about 2.7% right now as we speak, because the market has priced in some uncertainty. We keep hearing the recession word, which is good news for us on the investment side, but we have a city to run, and so increased inflation is going to be bad for us on the expense side. But everything that we're buying, the bottom half of that chart there shows that everything that we're purchasing is AAA rated, very safe. And the last 3 meetings that I have come to you, the January FedRec meeting, we said, we've locked in some interest revenue for the next year's budget, $142,000. Well, in February, we locked in a few more investments, and we said we have certainty of $184,000. Last month, we said $245,000, and this year, what you're seeing is every month as we take $4 million out of our state pool and put it to work in higher yielding investments, why that means that we have got an absolute certainty. We know we're going to get our principal back when it matures, and we know we're going to get the interest payments in because we're investing in debt issues. So what you're seeing is that as we continue to pull money out of the state pool, we are locking in budgetable revenue. So when we go to do the 2023-24 budget, we should have some real certainty. Everything in the state pool was a variable interest rate depending on how the short-term rates go. But here we're building in some certainty for the budget. And I know that we had some concern about, well, what did that mean compared to the state pool? The last couple of years, we had all of our money in the state pool. So whatever it earned, that's what we earned. But then there came a point in time where I'm able to show the yield of what we've invested, and you can see it kind of separated from where the state pool was earning. Now rates are starting to go up, so we still have $60 million that's in that little blue line, and so we'll earn a little bit more. That's up to 0.2%, 0.2%, 20 basis points, but we're earning much more than that. And I grabbed this off of the state treasurer's website. It's essentially the same graph. The pie chart on the right shows what they had at the end of February, and the chart on the left was kind of their average for the first couple of months of the year. The state treasurer's pool is a $20.2 billion state pool, and our little $60 million is 0.3%. It's a drop in the bucket. But when we put our money in the state treasurer's pool, what is our money in? The biggest pie slice there is U.S. Treasuries, which coincidentally is kind of what we buy. The next biggest slice is agencies. The bright blue bar, that's certificates of deposit and interbank DDA. That's demand deposit accounts. That's CDs and checking. And then there's repurchase agreement, and that's just very, very short-term investments in U.S. Treasuries. The only reason I bring this is because I want to show that what we're investing in on staff, or whether we leave it in the state pool or whether we invest it, we're still investing in treasuries and agencies. So the economic outlook, you may have read in the paper that the latest inflation figure was 8.5%. That's up from the previous month of 7.9, which is up from the month before that of 7.5. That's an increasing trend. It's not numbers that we like to see because that has implications when we go to budget the expense side of our budget next year. Luckily, we have a few more months to see where it goes, but I'm just reporting the news just so that you see that we're paying attention to what's going on in the economy. The Fed has said it's going to continue to make some more incremental rate increases, which is good news for us investing, but it's bad news for the expense side, and I think that's worse for us. We will continue to lock in higher rates on our investments so that we continue to at least improve our revenue for the city. So just to recap, the state of the city, our first quarter results are positive. Revenues are on budget slightly positive. Expenses are favorable. There are some timing issues. I feel much better seeing revenue come in positive than I do with expenses because you never can tell when there's lagging invoices. But essentially, it's all good news. We're growing our investment revenue. We're watching the economic outlook. And I can't tell you how happy staff is about the upcoming budget process. Most of them are not looking forward to it, but it's what we do every year. So with that, that's our financial report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Deputy Mayor, and then Sodovi.
Thank you. So I'd like to talk about the utility tax rebate program.
Good.
Thank you for your response to me today. In 2017, we had 115 rebates. In 18, we had 87, and in 19, we had 74, and it was going down, probably due to the difficulty in maintaining the information that we requested from those applying. And so we changed that to make it easier. But last year, for 41 rebates, we know people need help in Federal Way. And you know, this year, I believe you said you have 19 applications already,
Yes,
and it closes in a month or so.
May 30th.
Yeah, so we really need to get the word out and encourage people who are eligible to apply for it in whatever way we can. Maybe it needs to be on the front of the city's webpage. You know, we just have to get the word out, and as council, we can put it on our Facebook page, but I'm not sure that the folks that we're trying to reach have Facebook. Probably not. So I really want to see that pushed, and I really want to see the people that we're trying to serve use this program and get back to the high numbers that we had in the past.
That's a caring and compassionate thing. Last year, towards the end of the year, staff put some time, finance staff put some time into updating the finances on the city website. If you go to the finance page, one of the little menu items you can see is the utility tax rebate program. There's a flyer on there that shows the details that anybody that's interested would want to see, whether they apply, whether they're eligible. We also sent out letters. I think we sent out over 50 to previous recipients because we wanted to make sure that they got the old-fashioned letter in the mail.
Okay.
So we made some effort. So yes, we would appreciate it. If you want to just point anybody that you happen to be speaking to, point them to the city website, to the finance department's page. There's a link on there that's got the information, and we would love to work with them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Maybe we can move that to the very front so they don't have to search for it, because it is sometimes difficult to find things. I have a couple other questions. One is, I had asked if we could have a report on the permits that Sound Transit has taken out, and I still don't see that on here, but I am interested in following what Sound Transit has, their permitting, and what they're paying, and I think other people would be interested in that.
I do not remember the
That's
answer to that question, and I know we talked about it, and I think it was unavailable, or they don't do permits, but I don't remember what it is.
Oh,
Yep.
I hope they do permits. They are building
Or
stuff
it's,
here in
or
the
it's
city.
under, yeah,
Yeah.
or it's contracted, yeah, I don't remember.
I also have a question on, I'm glad that this all looks very positive, but I'm really concerned moving forward with our budget. And when about this time last year, we had maybe 15 to 17 ADP in the jails, and now we're up to 38. As we grow that, because we will, as the jails open up and the police, are able to, and the courts are able to put people in jail if that's where they need to be, that's going to impact our budget. And I know, we use those savings for other things. I'm also wondering, on police overtime was pretty high. And what special projects we've had that the police have been using overtime for this year?
For their special emphasis patrol,
Oh, okay. Though, that makes sense.
finance staff met with PD yesterday to go over the first quarter budget to actual report for all the police categories, including the jail, and they are monitoring the jail census. I think there's 4 different jail budget lines that they're watching. They're all still under budget. We do expect them to increase because of activity. But they're watching it, and our expectation is during the current year, we think that it'll stay within budget. The police are filling vacancies, but it has not overtaken the amount that they're spending on overtime for special emphasis patrol, and also when they do shift call-in work.
Okay,
So the police department is staying within the existing budget on that.
okay.
I'm so glad that we met to review their budget so I could answer that question. I actually knew the answer.
Awesome. I have some other questions, but I'll let other people ask first.
Mr. Dovey?
So I'm not sure how we could have our expenses down, 1.75% or whatever that number was versus
Yeah.
inflation's running 7, 8, 9%. That just doesn't make sense to me. How could we be down that much and prices are running away on everything else? Is it just not caught up to us yet?
A lot of the, yes, I think that's true. Personnel vacancies is part of our savings, and then we are underutilizing the budget for jail, so that's part of it. Yeah, I don't think the inflationary figures are going to hit our personnel for a while.
But, we're in the process of trying to bring on more personnel.
Mm-hmm.
We get the report, hey, we're down, but in reality, if you forecast it out, aren't we upside down? I mean, as we like we just brought on another person that's gonna be revenue neutral, but we're trying to get more police officers. I mean, I'd like to see the piece of that forecast that says, yeah, we're down today, but this is what we expect that we're gonna be upside down, how it's gonna shift.
Sure, that's a tough one, because when you order police cars, we expect the cost of vehicles to go up. When the EJ is gonna be ordering materials for his streets, we expect those to go up. That just sounds foreseeable. Now, we've got purchasing, contracts and pools, such as the one that you approved earlier for
I guess I'm
Thomas.
just, I'm preparing myself and maybe asking you,
Yes.
because, hey, this is great, but next month, I think it's gonna probably look different in the next month. I mean, the numbers gotta switch. And then, my other comment is, when we have those graphs, I mean, I can see on the graph that our revenues are down, like you said, 5,900 or a small number. It'd be helpful for me, instead of having to look at the graph and trying to figure out the difference between how much it's down, if you just had a number there that said, we're down 5,900 or we're down 2,500, because every one of those graphs, we were close, but we are behind in our revenue collections on sales tax per those graphs. Not much, but it is a number that is down, and we just need, I appreciate the way the reports and the budget, and I know everybody's working, because we've got to make sure that we run.
I'm willing to continue to try
Yeah,
new iterations
Yeah.
to find what communicates well, because that's the whole
Yeah,
purpose of
yeah.
a graph, and if it isn't doing its
yeah,
job.
the graph is
Yeah.
good, but it needs to be a little more, for me, a little more granular.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a comment, so when you say minus 5,200 or whatever it was, I actually see that instead of have to remember that's what you said.
Right,
Thank you.
sure.
Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, well, with that, on top of the graph lines, I mean, maybe just the total, with that sales tax, I mean, the total's there, so we can see what it is, and that should be easy to do. With sales tax, I mean, we have it for the different areas. Where does sales for online sales fit in? Because, I mean, as a city, I believe that, I mean, if I go on Amazon and purchase something, I'm paying the Washington state sales tax appropriate for Federal Way.
Yeah.
How does that come back to the city, and what part of the sales tax revenue is that?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer. And, no, because I know that we do receive them, but when I showed you the graph, I showed you the geographical areas, but we didn't include online.
That'd be good to have.
Yeah, I think that's one of the critical things, is
You're
because
moving my
that's-
cheese. I
yeah.
gotta work on next month's graph.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I would suspect that the online tax revenue is greater than a lot of those other
It's certainly
areas.
material, yeah.
So, yeah, I think that definitely needs to be included in there, and I would suspect that may be an area that may be growing more significantly than what the others are.
Yeah, because I know it's in the data from the Department of Revenue. I know we've got it.
So, okay, all right, thank you.
My pleasure.
Council President Kochmar?
I'm just looking for where the property tax is located, the property income revenue.
That one, I don't show a monthly graph. It comes in twice a year. What is it, May and October? And I don't think we've received the biggest chunk of it for the first half. I also, to be honest with you, don't worry a whole lot about it, because I'm pretty sure we're always going to get it. The assessor and the tax collector is going to get it. They may not get it this year, but they might have to wait till the property changes hands. That one is generally pretty predictable and fairly collectible. I don't really.
I just need to know, where we are.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 1% of total revenue, although our revenue, our property values have gone up.
And it's a very material revenue for the city, so I can add that.
Yeah, I'd just like to see, if it's.
Yeah, what it'll show us is how the collections are coming along through the year, how much the county's collected. We ultimately expect it to hit pretty much 100% by the end of the year, but I've got that. I can bring that.
So I guess I'm just concerned about, the Performing Arts Center is quite a drag on our, we just need to figure out how to turn those loss leaders to loss positive. And so if you're looking on page 231, and you're talking about other significant funds of note, you're talking about, it looks like the biggest fund that we have really at current is the utility tax, which is pretty basically already allocated. So I guess other than the sales tax, I don't know, there was another thing I wanted to ask, but sales tax by sector. Now, we used to talk about sales tax coming in revenue by the commons, by the 348. I don't see that. Am I missing that?
Yeah, and that would overlap Councilmember Walsh's question about the online, so.
Well, I think you had that in your presentation, but it's not in our, it's not in our
Yeah.
packet.
That was the old one.
On page 144?
No, that was old.
Oh, that was old. Okay, we'd just like to see that. By sector, we need to know, how our retail sales and online are going. So we know, we can look at the past and know where we're going in the future. And then, I don't have a real good handle on where we're heading in the future, because we're coming out of COVID. I don't know who's really buying ice cream. Mr. Wall. So I just am concerned about where we're heading.
Sure, me too, and that's one of the biggest economic indicators as we go to do next year's budget. Is the city thriving or is it not? You know, when the citizens thrive, the businesses thrive, then our budget will do better, but if it's not, then we want to know that too. Thank you.
So maybe could include some of those things in the next report. I'm more concerned about those than I am about the investment income, because you have a big section on investment income that you're working on, which is fine. But I really need to get a feel for where we're heading as a city with income, with revenue and expenditure.
Sure, I'm thinking that sales tax and real estate tax are the ones that show how the economy is going. Does that fit what you're thinking as well? I'm not sure that utility tax does as much, but
Well, the real estate excise tax can only be used for capital, so I'm kind of more concerned about sales tax so that we can, for our general fund.
I'm thinking how it reflects how the general economy is doing, are property values rising, and are they selling, and that sort of thing. It's, yeah, the dollars aren't that much, but it tells us how our city is doing health-wise.
Thank you.
Committee member Erica Lauren, go ahead.
Hi, Steve. Thank you for your report. I appreciate it. So I brought this up, I think, 3 months ago, and I asked you about it when we met, I think, in November. And I hear other council members bringing it up as well. I keep receipts, and I'm really anal about my expenditures, especially with my business. And I've recently had to raise my rates by close to 75% to make up for the additional costs that I'm incurring in running my business. And I'm also looking at prices of everything going exponential. You know, they're saying it's 12%, but if you actually compare prices, everything's up closer to 40 to 50% right now. And I'm really concerned about how we are planning as a city for the future, because it's looking pretty dismal right now. Just, you know I'm not supposed to speak, what's the word, realistically, but that's what we're facing right now is really high cost for everything across the board. So this is leading me into the utility tax situation. So senior citizens, they live on a fixed income, and our utility taxes are coming in. I think they're 31% over what we predicted. You know, I think it's a 31% increase from last year. And I see that we offer a rebate to low-income people, but a lot of senior citizens don't fit that income bracket, but they also can't afford this increase on top of everything else. And I'm wondering what we can do as a city council to help our senior citizens in our city better cope with this situation, and possibly giving them a break on this utility tax. I've noticed how much my utilities have gone up, and I can afford it. I could just go work more. But senior citizens don't have that option. So this is not a question for Steve necessarily. It's a question for the whole city council. What are we doing to support the senior citizens in our community? I think that giving them an option to apply, not for a rebate, but for a break somehow on this utility tax increase. Is that something that's possible? Where would I bring that up? Is this the right place to do it? And if it's not, then where should I be going to with these questions?
Interesting question, because the utility tax rebate program, was that an ordinance or a resolution?
It is, and just for a little background, the reason it's structured as a rebate is because we don't collect these taxes. And the people collecting them don't always have the demographic or financial information that we're basing the exemptions on. So to basically shift the burden of administering reduced tax or a tax exemption to the collector, I don't know how that would work. That might be problematic. We'd have to look into that.
Okay, so should I send you an email then directly, or should I send one to you and Brian? It's just, I'm in contact with, like Derek Burton. He has come into the city council and he made public comment about the utility tax before. And other senior citizens that I've spoken to in our community are really upset, especially about the utility tax. One person in particular said, I have to make a decision whether or not to make a pot of coffee now. And that to me it just seems a little outrageous. So where do I go to continue this conversation?
Steve, one thing, just I would like to point out, the comments we've had before from I forgot the gentleman's name, Mr. Purton, was specifically about the garbage utility tax. So
Okay.
we probably need to educate people a little better on what they're being taxed on. All of the utility taxes are fixed, and they've spent at the same rate, with the exception of water, which we added, water and sewer recently. But they haven't increased. The only thing that's increased has been garbage tax. So, so a pot of coffee isn't going to cost more than it ever did, except for that electricity's gone up.
Okay. And the reason, because what they're saying is, well, look, you're getting a 31% increase in revenue from the taxes. So can you give us a break on what we're paying? Because costs are going up on everything. And that's just, honestly, I'm wondering, what we can do as a city council to help mitigate that for our senior citizens. And this is the FedRAC committee. Is there a different place that, like Deputy Mayor Honda, is there another place I should be bringing this up?
Could I add one thing? One of Mr. Purton's objections was that he felt that the taxpayers were being charged more than they had been said that they would. We try to budget cautiously. We try to budget low. The reason is because if we're budgeting revenue that we're planning on spending, we want to make sure that we can promise the citizen services based on revenue that we have a high probability of collecting. So when the revenue comes in higher, that part of that is a product of our budgeting cautiously. So when I tell you that the revenue comes in favorably, that's generally because we are seeing a higher volume of usage. It's not the rate. I think it's the higher volume. Now, we did add some components. We added some recycling components to the garbage collection. So that added a piece of the utility tax revenue. But I think that we're trying to be very transparent and very accountable. And when revenue comes in more, I don't want it to be characterized. I wouldn't characterize it that we're charging the taxpayers more than we said that we would. I think it's that we budgeted cautiously. And sometimes there's uncertainty. We don't know what the volume is going to be when we add new programs.
But that's not really okay, maybe I'm not wording this properly. So our revenue is higher than what we expected, and that's great. The problem is that our senior citizens are suffering right now, and is there some way that we can include them in the rebate program or give them a break? It just, exempt them from whatever increases that we've made, like the solid waste 10%, something like that. Because their incomes may be too high to be eligible for the rebate program, is what I'm saying. Is there some way that we could say people on a fixed income of a certain amount could be eligible for the rebate program as well? Or, that's,
There is. We can bring back for your review what the current arrangement is. In 2021, we simplified the work that somebody would have to do rather than require 12 months of utility bills. We just required one, and we expanded their eligibility so that it included all ages. It was more income focused. But the ordinance that was passed in 2021 is now in effect, and so we've got a deadline currently, so that program is already in place. I think before we, so to answer your question, we have a fair amount of time during 2022 to make any changes we want to the program, so that would be in effect for the following year.
what's the income level limit right now for that?
It's based on number of people in a household. The maximum income for one person, for example, is 40,500, and it's graduated
Okay.
for other people, for additional.
I understand.
Sure. And we've adjusted the rebate so that it's flat amounts, $20 for gas, $25 for electricity, and there's other ones. So we've simplified it, and it's not that difficult to review, so we could bring it.
Could I,
I can still look myself. Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Okay, so Mr. Dovey, and then Deputy Mayor Honda, and then Council President.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of comment on what Erica just, Councilmember Norton just talked about. I think that really this is not something we're going to do at the dais up here. This is really a discussion that's coming up with our budget and how we decide what we're going to do for 2022 or 2023, I guess. I guess we are 2022. But anyway, I'm all for looking at different things, but I think that when we say seniors, although people may think this is bad when I say it, I don't believe we segment people. We represent 109,000 people or 102, whatever our number is today. And so we have to be more global than say, we have one group that has a problem or a concern. And as a council, I would hope as we go through budget, we look at the whole city, the whole ethnic group, the whole age group, and not just focus on one individual group, although they are very important and they're very, they have needs like everybody else. But I'd like to broaden it out if we're going to have that discussion and not do it just be knee-jerk at the day of the dais.
Deputy Mayor.
But the people, everyone else already is represented. Senior citizens on fixed incomes aren't included really in anything we do that I've seen so far. That's why I brought it up, was to be inclusive of them as well.
And that's why I said we need to look at everybody and let's refocus and not be just segmented. Let's be global for all citizens and seniors and ethnic groups and minorities on finances and the whole thing, because it's a whole process. It's not just one group that we need to change for.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So when we talk about the utility tax rebate program, for someone what the rebate is, it's a tax portion of the utilities. It's not for the cost of the utilities. So if you're paying $100 for electricity and $10 if that is tax, that's what the rebate would be. Although we now have a set fee for everyone to make it simpler, because it became a little too difficult for some people to have all of their receipts for every single utility and for 12 months. So we try to make it simpler for people to get more people to apply and to help more people. But I don't have I do think it's good to review those kind of things. It's not just for seniors, also it's for some folks who are disabled. So there is some qualifying factors that you have to meet to apply for that program. And I have, no problem reviewing those again. I think that's always a good thing. As for the solid waste, that increase in that tax is to go to resurfacing the residential streets, which we have not been able to do for many, many years here in the city of Federal Way. And I know the street in front of my house could really use to be resurfaced. It's not on the list. It probably won't be for many years, but there are some neighborhoods that the streets really need to be resurfaced. We weren't going to be able to do that. And so we voted to do this tax. And so since we are bringing in more money than we anticipated, perhaps with that, that means that more streets will be able to be resurfaced. But I have no problem reviewing the program. I think that's a good idea. I did want to say to Steve, so when I look on this report for Dumas Bay, the community center, and the PAC, it's a little concerning to see the numbers that are being reported. And I understand we're coming out of COVID. I understand that we may not be fully functioning in those three buildings, but it's going to be a problem if we don't get at least the community center up to what they were. And I'm not sure if we're not offering as many programs as we were, or if we've had less people with memberships, or what's going on there. But I'd like to, maybe we can get a more in-depth report of what's going on in each of these buildings, and so the council can understand that, especially before budget season comes along. And then I have one other question. When COVID happened, and things were shut down, and businesses were closing, people were losing their jobs, we adjusted our budget. And what would this current budget that we're operating on look if we had not adjusted that budget?
I'm not sure I know, because that was a little bit before my time. Was that, Chase, do you recall?
I think most of what we adjusted was in the 2021 year, but we can look at that, I think. But I think most of the adjustments were made only in 2021.
Okay. I'm just I'm curious, because I am really concerned with the upcoming budget, so.
I hesitate to speak for another program director, but I know anecdotally that I hear that the Federal Way Community Center has been very busy across all its programs in the last few weeks.
Good.
But I think it would be better to hear that from the parks folks themselves. When we meet with any department, I joke that their budget to actual report is just numbers on paper until I talk to them and they tell me what's going on in the real world, whether that's police or parks or streets. And generally, when you get people that are good with numbers, coupled with people that know the program, I think you get a better report. So I'd like to not try to wing it on my own.
And I do understand, that there are some people who are uncomfortable being in public places, and so we're still in the rebuilding and recovering stage from COVID and what we've been through with the pandemic. But it would be nice to get a report on what's going on at the community center and Dumas Bay. We've had one on the PAC, but it would be nice to understand what's going on in those two buildings. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the feedback.
Well, thank you, Chair Tran. Would wonder if Chair Tran and Deputy Mayor Honda, if we would ask for our financial director, Groom, to give a report at the next council meeting on what the rebate program entails and who's eligible to apply and how they can apply, since we've only had 16 applicants, I understand, so that once it's on TV, then it's on 3 times a week for 2 weeks. And so there should be people who would pick up on that. And also from that, we could do a letter to the editor or an editorial or some kind of an advertisement in the Mirror, so that people could then pick up from that, know that the deadline is, I think, the end of May. Is that correct?
Yep, Yes, and I think everybody's had a
May
chance to
31st.
finish their tax returns, and since it's income-based across all ages, anything, it's all income-focused. I think now that they've got their tax returns, I'm encouraged that we've got 19, and I don't know how many people.
Sure.
If you give them a deadline, they get it in right before the
So
deadline.
with Councilmember Norton's excellent questions, those are a
Right.
way for us to be reminded what the rebate program is and how people can apply for it. Also, there are, for the utilities themselves, I know that Lake Haven has a customer service program that people can apply through that utility for help with their monthly bill, their water bill, that is administered through the multi-service center. And I'm pretty sure the multi-service center is slammed right now. But I believe the same is for Puget Sound Energy for the electric bill. I'm not sure about the garbage, but I think that if we provide the phone numbers where they can call, that would be also helpful for folks. I think some people coming out of COVID, my understanding is that they weren't paying their bills, for example, rent and some utilities, and I think it's all coming due now, and I think it's going to be a problem for some of our citizens. It's all going to come to a head now.
I'll be honest with you, when I worked in Yakima, utility billing was part of finance, and I was very aware of the governor's moratorium on collecting or turning off utilities for non-payment, and I haven't been paying attention to if that came to an end and if it did.
Well, it's coming to an end,
But that was
so
a major big deal during COVID,
it's
sure.
it's huge for here as
Yeah,
well.
very concerned about citizens.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Oh, I forgot to turn off my light, I'm sorry.
Oh.
But it's delightful to hear all the questions. We've had some meetings where we just accepted this report and went on. So I'm glad to hear questions being asked.
So before I ask for a motion, I want to share some of my thoughts. The first one is the utilities tax rebate. I think we need to do outreach, right? We can, partner with, social services agency in the city to promote that program. My office, for example, we serve about 17,000 people, low-income people in the city. If the city provide my office with information, all we need to do is just pretty much give it out to people. Okay. That one way we can promote the program at no cost to us. I think we can help with that, and we can ask all the nonprofit agencies that located within the city to do the same, and I'm sure they will more than happy to help us to get the word out there to residents in the city. The second thing, I agree with everybody that talked about the concern about the inflation, about the possibility of recession, and I'm pretty sure that you and your staff are monitoring the situation nationwide. But I was just wondering, instead of us waiting until we, get involved with the budget, should we start looking for ways to reduce expenditure now, and getting ready, knowing that our purchase power is losing, at 8.5% now, meaning that we have to pay more to get the same item in the future. And then if the recession actually hit, that will impact our tax base, because people won't be able to buy much or spend money. So I was just wondering if we should have that conversation start early.
I think staff is addressing that as we monitor the current budget as we're going through the year. When we meet with the departments and we're reviewing the budget and we're having discussions, are we going to be able to stay within budget throughout the rest of the year? And I think we are at this point. But I really applaud your engagement in what's going on as I give you these reports every month, because at the policy level, when it comes to adopting next year's budget, you need to have your finger on the pulse of what's going on with the city, with our finances, with our departments. Not to avoid the question, but I think you want to make sure that staff is having those discussions, and I think we are.
Very good.
I have one more question.
Yes.
I forgot to ask this. When property taxes are sent back to the city of Federal Way from King County,
Yes.
do they include a list of properties that have not paid? Because there's so many, I believe there's 3 years that they have before they are in big trouble with the county. But during those times that they're not paying, because there was a time when some of our downtown property owners didn't pay for 2 years, before they were going to be in an issue with King County. We need the money every year. And do they send a list? And if they do, is there any way that as a city, we contact them and say, gosh, you're using the services but not paying the taxes? Is there any way we could do that?
With the monthly remittance, they don't. What I will tell you, and this is just off the top of my head, that with property taxes, the county is in a position where they have, this is kind of delving into the legal side, but for non-payment of taxes, they can foreclose or lien or what have you, and ultimately can collect, and it might wait years before a property is sold. But from an accounting standpoint, I'm feeling pretty confident that we will collect. It may not be this year, but by far, the bulk is collected. I know that when I was working in Yakima, the county would put out a fairly thick booklet from time to time of delinquent properties, and it was a very thick booklet. I can't imagine what King County's book would look like. Maybe it's probably online. I'd be willing to call a friend, anybody else that wants to add on to that, but I'm just property tax isn't, from a finance standpoint, it's not my biggest fear.
Okay.
Sales tax is, but property tax, I have a high degree of confidence.
All right, thank you.
Sure. We can all be offended when people don't take it, don't pay it. I agree with you.
Great discussion. Thank you for that.
Council, thank you for your feedback.
All right.
See, I closed my book, so I guess I'm moving the report to the 2022, May 3rd, 2022 consent agenda.
Do all the motions.
You make the motion, Erica.
God, thanks. Thank you so much, Jack. I move to forward the March 22 monthly financial report to the May 3rd, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. The matter passed 3-0. Thank you so much. Our next meeting is going to be on May 24th, 2022 at 5 p.m. In the chamber. And with that,
Okay.
this meeting is
Hey,
concluded.
good travels, Councilmember Dawson. See ya.
Safe travels.
Bye.
Thank you.